if you watch the Pacers every single day, you might get too caught up in the mundane day-to-day Pacers. You might get caught up in some biases because this team stinks right now. Let's take a big picture statistical look at the Pacers 3/4 of the way through the season. Who's underrated? Who's overrated? What are this team's biggest problems? How can they get better heading into next season? We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News, and today is a strange day in an NBA season, and very few people know why, but it is a rare day where the Pacers did not play yesterday, and they don't play tomorrow. That is so rare in the rapid-fire NBA these days. 3 days off for the Pacers to kind of zoom out. They get to refresh, and I get to zoom out because watching this team every day, especially a team that made a bunch of moves at the trade deadline, I get too caught up in the day-to-day and the who's up and who's down from this team, and I get to zoom out today. And because I get to do that, Mr. Adam Fromal is here from the Sports Math Network, where I used to write for NBA Math, one of my favorite websites on the internet, one of my few bookmarks. I am very picky about my bookmarks. But Adam is here, and we're going to take a big statistical look at the Indiana Pacers. Who's overrated? Who's underrated? Why does this team stink? How can they get better? And I said a lot of stuff you do without saying how you doing. So, Adam, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm glad to be here. I think that my dancing during the intro video is not actually going to be on video, which is probably a good thing for everyone. But no, it's good to be here. It feels like a throwback as well as a look forward because we haven't worked together in so long since the NBA Math days, and been following from afar and a huge fan of everything you're doing, and it's awesome to be here.
A few crystal balls in the middle, which is another great project way to. It's probably the only kind of way that makes sense to rank players. This isn't just I think this guy's better. So if you never followed NBA Math's crystal ball thing, and it comes at the beginning and end of every single season, it's also a good way to see who's getting better and who's not. We're talking about the Pacers today from a statistical perspective. Not everybody likes stats, but I think in a season like this where they have really underperformed, so much compared to expectation, I thought, and I was pretty low compared to some local people, that they'd be 500 on the dot. I had them at 41-41. And if they win every game for the rest of the season over the final month, they will go 37-45. That's obviously not happening. A massively disappointing season for the Indiana Pacers and a very, very rare type of season for this franchise. So from your seat, Adam, you don't watch his team every single day, although obviously you watch them all the time. What do you feel like the biggest deficiency is for this team this year?
I think you nailed it with the word you already used, which is underperforming. And it's not just relative to the preseason expectations, because I was right there with you where I thought this would be a team that played around 500 basketball, made noise on just about any night because it could hang with the contenders. It could get the better of the bottom feeders. Didn't think it would actually be one of the bottom feeders. But, even if you look at what they've actually done this season, like Pythagorean wins, which uses points scored and points allowed as baselines to set expectations, because those are typically predictive of actual wins and losses. This team should be 28-39 instead of 22-45. And that's a big difference. Just that difference alone heading into games on Wednesday night, they'd jump the Knicks. They'd be within striking distance of the 10th seed and a spot in the play-in tournament. And that's a huge perception shift in and of itself. Why is that happening? Well, the clutch play. I think that's the biggest thing, and I'm sure you've talked about it a bunch, but the Pacers have a league high 39 games in which they've been ahead or behind by no more than 5 points in the final 5 minutes. They're 10-29 in those games, which is disastrous. A minus 20.7 net rating in those clutch situations. The Knicks have actually been worse, but they're the Knicks, so we kind of expect that. But it's like this team forgets how to play basketball in those final minutes of close games. There's no separation for easy shots. There's no defense played whatsoever. And you can't win games that way. I mean, as we've seen, only 10 wins in 39 opportunities. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, because if you go across the board looking at the 4 factors, any of the advanced statistics on offense or defense, you kind of see the across the board, not quite awfulness, but definitely not goodness. And it's the clutch play that stands out as this is the death knell for this team.
Yeah, my usual favorite stat for that is games within 4. 4 is not one possession, but like it could be one possession, whatever. They're 3-16 in games decided by 4 or less. That's insane. First of all, that over a quarter of their games have been that close. Like that shows they're close to being good. But like even if they can't be 519 games. If they're 9-10 in those games, they're right where you just said 29 wins, 2 out of the play-in, right? Like, and what I've always said is like, yeah, that's not a good season either. But they were a playing team last year. Like it wouldn't be that crazy with the injuries they've had to go, okay, they're a playing team again. But they lose every single close game they play, basically. It's really remarkable. And one of those clutch wins was against the Kings. Like, does that even really count? So
No, it doesn't.
so
Absolutely not.
it's been misery in the clutch, and rightfully so. A lot of people have said they need a closer, and they kind of do. Brogdon on occasion is good in the clutch. In fact, usually he's okay, but no one else has been. Karis LeVert nosedived in clutch effectiveness this season. For me, though, last year they had basically the same team. Well, before the trade deadline. Now they're obviously way different. So before the deadline this year, they had mostly the same team they had last year. And yet last year they were okay in the clutch because they defended in the clutch. And this year the defense is just, I mean, they never get stops in the final minute. It's almost comical how bad their defense becomes in the final minute of games, as evidenced by 2 nights ago, Jalen Smith randomly fouling with 15 seconds left in a tie game when they were on defense. Like they just cannot stop anyone in these close games. And it wouldn't get them to the 500 level I thought they'd be at, but they'd be way closer. And it's crazy how much, the game really gets under the microscope, how much that has defined their season.
And it's one of those situations where typically, almost in all sports, like those kind of swings, the one possession games in NFL games, the one run games in MLB, the clutch performances in the NBA, like it's largely luck driven in a lot of situations because one bounce goes differently and the outcome's different. And to see this far from a 500 record, to me, it means that there's something more going on. And you'll probably know the answer to this better than I will since you watch every game. But I can't help but look at Rick Carlisle because this isn't the first time his teams have performed so poorly in crunch time situations. We saw it with the Mavericks early in Luka Doncic's tenure there. So he has this reputation as a guy who elevates all the bench players, gets the most out of a lot of guys. But this has been a consistent shortcoming. And it's not one that's typically associated with him because of his pretty sterling reputation.
Yeah, that is something that a lot of fans of the team were really bringing up early in the season too. Like last year, the Dallas Mavericks, clutch net rating 22nd, minus 6.3. They were actually 18-15 in those games with that net rating, by the way. And some of that is because I think John Schumann's done the best at describing this. Like if you're up 5 and then you score, you get a positive clutch net rating, and then your defensive rating literally cannot be hurt on the next possession because you're now up 7. Right. So like sometimes net rating and record in clutch doesn't match perfectly, but it's the best thing we have without literally tracking it ourselves. But anyway, minus 6.3, 22nd in net rating last year, the Mavs were. The year before that, 23rd, minus 10.4. They were 17-24. The year before that, 24th.
This is where it gets really bad, right?
Yeah, the year before that's the year before Luka where it gets awful. But you're right, and you nailed it. What the heck? Like Rick's reputation is like, look what he did to LeBron in the finals, and he's got all these adjustments. He's a genius with these own defenses, and he makes Jason Terry look like the LeBron stopper. Like, wow. And then now that's not working as well. And I don't know why. Something intrinsically about me is like it's not on Carlisle, but there's something to it, and I can't ignore it for forever. But like, is that weird that I can't reconcile that in my head that it would be the coach's fault? Like, I don't think he's.
No, I mean,
it's weird.
I always have such a tough time evaluating coaching in general because we're not ingrained with these teams. Even if you're watching every single game, you're not a part of every practice, every shoot around. You're not a part of the huddles, so it's tough to parse out what is the coach's fault and what isn't. I always feel kind of slimy whenever I talk about Coach of the Year voting at all. So I think it's intrinsically difficult, but he's the common thread. And I think it manifests itself most on the defensive end, where there's just disorganization. There's missed rotations. And when that happens, like these are intelligent basketball players. It's not like they're just forgetting how to play because there's pressure amped up in that situation. Like to me, that's a schematic failure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, I will say this. 2 years ago, the Mavs were 15th in defensive rating in the clutch, and they were 18th the year before that. He is a designator of a lot of defensive assignments. Lloyd Pierce handles a lot of the Pacers defense. So it could just be that. I actually should probably look at the Hawks at some point as well, who were, by the way, 25th in clutch defensive rating last year with Lloyd Pierce for part of the season. Like, maybe it is just a staff thing. They have a staff of guys who are well respected and talented coaches, but are not necessarily good in these sort of situations. And it's been almost baffling there's some things that, like, just when reputation doesn't match what's happening, that always hurt my brain. And like, when players gas a play, like when NBA players are like, this guy's amazing, he's so good, and I don't think he's that good. Drummond, Jamal Crawford, all these dudes. I'm like, I have reasons why I think they're wrong, but like, am I wrong? These guys play like they're smarter than me. They get it. And that's how I feel with coaches all the time, because I have no idea what I'm talking about with coaches. There's no good way to evaluate them. So the Pacers' clutch play being so bad when it wasn't good, but it was like okay last year, really good with Vic, is like, okay, what's going on here? Losing Vic certainly a factor too.
The Lloyd Pierce comment is an interesting one. I'll send my apologies along to Rick Carlisle.
I don't want to slam two coaches in one show. but again, I don't even know what they are and aren't saying, right? Like I can only see what happens, and I'm usually a blame player kind of guy anyway. Like Jalen Smith obviously made a stupid foul.
That's what we see. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
I'm right there with you.
So it's tough. I think that, though, is the low-hanging fruit for Pacer improvement next year. Is just, and they're even at 3-19. Let's say there is a problem with their clutch play. That still will reflex a little bit towards the positive next year because of that luck factor, like you said. Like the Russell Westbrook MVP season, their clutch luck was like unbelievable. That Thunder team, and that reflexed the following season. So we'll see. I think that is a way that they could easily grow, but they've got to get better on defense in general. It's so weird to see the Pacers near the bottom of the league in defense, and they've got to get better in that way. Hey guys, our new partner is also our next partner that has a product that I literally use every single day. It's called Athletic Greens. I started taking it because I wanted better gut health and more energy every day. I started taking it in the morning, and I've been really enjoying it. Been doing it for a couple weeks now. It's super healthy. It doesn't taste super healthy, though. It's got this tropical taste that is actually good in the morning. So what is it? Well, with one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're getting 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food-sourced superfoods to help start off your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, a bunch of it. I take it every morning, one scoop right into my water. My girlfriend loves it. It really helps me get more energy in the morning and getting through the day. It makes less coffee requirements for me. I took a few packets to work. It's very portable. You've got to try it yourself. It's lifestyle friendly. So if you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, whatever, you can try it. It costs less than $3 a day. They have a ton of 5-star reviews. You've got to try it yourself right now. It's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into flu and cold seasons. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a bunch of pills and supplements. Make it easy. Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take advantage of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Also want to tell you guys about the good folks over at betonline.net. It's that time of year again. College basketball's tournament is here. It's upon us. Big Ten getting going. For the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. They remain the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to over that website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Let's pivot from team to players. There are a couple guys around the league who are considered very good on the Pacers. There are a couple guys who are not considered as good. They're 22-45. Perhaps my thoughts of these players don't matter as much to someone on the outside or someone who covers the league in a more statistical based way. Well, you want to go the harsh way or the nice way first? Can we be nice to players first?
Let's be nice first.
Okay, we'll be nice first. Who do you think, and who do the numbers say on the Pacers is underrated compared to either their perception or just their general production?
I actually think that Malcolm Brogdon is an answer here still. Even if he is viewed as maybe the best player on the team, I don't think the developments that he's made have gotten enough credit because he was kind of billed as that jack of all trades off-ball guy. He's added so much to his game this year. I think especially in like the floater range, we've seen him become much more comfortable 66.2% of his threes were assisted last year. Only 58.9% have this year. He's gotten so much more comfortable off the bounce, and it's enabled the Pacers to run so many more sets with him operating more as that lead guard. I don't think the national reputation has caught up to just how diverse his skill set has become while maintaining that 50-40-90 threat, while still filling so many roles in so many different ways and not really struggling in any of them. So, if you look at any of the catch-all metrics, they're a little skewed because he's missed so much time this year and because he's playing for a Pacers team that has really struggled for continuity. Like only 61% of the minutes this year are from players on last year's roster, which wasn't supposed to happen for a team returning so many players. So I don't know that those really show the underratedness so much as the minutia of his game.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think locally, the perception is, yeah, he's good, but he never plays. And I think that perception was amplified by, I don't want to say that it was intentional necessarily, but like Kevin Pritchard got a lot of injury-prone players on the last iteration of the Pacers. And that's part of why he could get them for the value he did. But when you have, Miles Turner misses 15 games about every season. TJ Warren misses a bunch of time. Malcolm Brogdon misses a bunch of time. Karis LeVert misses a bunch of time. You put all that together, and it's a lot. First of all, they get hurt naturally because they're injury-prone players. But then the guys who are filling in are now playing bigger roles or playing out of position. Now they get hurt more often. Like it all just snowballs. So now a lot of those guys are not on the team anymore. But the perception of the old era where it was like a new injury every night for the Pacers really has hurt, I think, Brogdon's perception locally as this injury-prone guy. Yeah, he's good, but he never plays. And that's true. That's 100% true. But I do think that people now underrate him because when he does play, he's an effing baller.
And I struggle to buy into the injury-prone label in general because I think so much of it is fluke-driven. If it's the same recurring injury over and over, then I'm more willing to go down that route. But when it's a bunch of random things, like it happens. This is a physical game. These guys are still taking care of their body, and I don't know that there's that much like real statistical backing for guys truly being injury-prone.
Well, that I could make a whole topic out of. So.
I'm not prepared for that. I'm not prepared for a deep dive on that one.
I am not a doctor, so nothing I say medically makes any sense. I sort of buy, I agree with you a little bit of the luck thing. Like Gordon Hayward carried an injury-prone rep for a while that I was like, no. Like he's had some BS injuries. Like those are not things that just happen.
And that's the thing is that like the type of injuries matter a lot too.
Yeah.
If you're breaking bones, then those are more traumatic events than if you're constantly straining your hamstring.
Right.
Shout
I agree with that. So here's where I think there is a little difference. Rick Carlisle has said this a few times before, and players have said this before. They call themselves, they refer to their players as fast healers. Like his body heals quickly. I don't know if that's a mental thing. I don't know if that's a physical thing, but I do think that's a real thing. I don't know how at all, but like Justin Holiday never missed games ever. Like he was a fast healer. Isaiah Jackson this year, Rick Carlisle's called him a fast healer. I think that's a thing, and I think Brogdon's probably a slow healer. But I do agree with you also that the injury prone label is a little annoying when they're like all over the place. That said, he misses games for everything, so it's hard to say with him.
My other not injury prone player, my other underrated player, I think this is the big one, is Terry Taylor. I know he's getting a lot of love in Indiana right now, but the national perception has not caught up. He's only played 332 minutes this season. He's the win shares per 48 minutes leader on this team. And I never hear him come up as one of the many promising rookies from this draft class in any of these national discussions. Maybe it's just because he went undrafted out of Austin Peay. Maybe it's because this team hasn't garnered a lot of national talk in general because it struggled so much. But there are so many positive indicators, even if his 2-point percentage, which is currently at 63.6, even if that regresses, which it might not because he's so good at finding these open lanes to the basket and finishing on the interior. But even if that does regress, he's a phenomenal rebounder, which I think is probably his number one skill at this point. He does a lot of the little things well. Like he's a great screen setter, even as a listed shooting guard. He's held his own in a wide range of defensive roles. There's so much to love about this guy. And some of the advanced metrics are backing that up as well. So at NBA Math, we use our TPA metric, and the offensive component of that, offensive points added. He's not just in the positives as a rookie, which is hard enough to do because we're measuring against a baseline of league average play, but he's blowing away the field. Scotty Barnes is number 2 with 7.95 offensive points added this season. Terry Taylor is number 1 at 20.95. He is leaps and bounds better than everyone else. Again, bolstered by the small sample size that we're working with, and the ease of throwing up huge efficiency numbers in that inherently small size. It's still not easy to do. No one else is doing it.
Yeah, if he was 6'8", or maybe not even that tall, he'd probably start. I've never seen someone his height play the way he does. Jamario Jones is the only comp I've ever heard, and that was from a G League coach. I asked about him. And it is so bizarre. And I think that's part of the reason people don't know about him or forget about him is like, he doesn't qualify for the league leaderboards yet with his minutes, but he would be second in the NBA in offensive rebounds per 36. He's 6'5". Like, that is crazy. Only Steven Adams has him beat. And like you said, he's a good finisher. He's so patient after he gets the board. He up fakes a lot. He's got good enough second leap and peak leap to score on the rim and to get those rebounds, obviously, with taller players around him. And, when you're 6'5", you don't expect that guy to shoot 70% at the rim as a rookie, but he is. So, yeah, he doesn't shoot particularly well away from the basket, but he also never really shoots away from the basket. Like 60-something% of his shots are inside 5 feet. So he's an excellent finisher. He's, I think, for my money, the best rebounder of his size I've ever seen, and maybe will ever see, honestly. And it's weird because they have O'Shea Brissett playing the 4 a lot. They've gone these smaller groups with a guard playing the 4 recently. They've played 2 bigs like Jalen Smith at the 4 sometimes. So like there are reasons he's not playing as much, but also I feel like with a guy like that whose stats are what they are and who has such a unique skill set, you almost need to find a way to play him, especially as a 22 and 45 team every game. I can't believe that he's not playing more often.
I want to see him play more often. I do wonder about the scalability. He's one of those guys where I feel like he might be most effective in that 15 to 20 minute per game role. I don't know that I want to see him on the floor for 30 minutes per game because it's easier to expose some of the weaknesses like the lack of shooting range. It's harder for him to parlay that energy expenditure into consistent effectiveness. So it does feel to me like he might be one of those like super powered role guys who never blossoms into much more than that, but there's still immense value in finding those guys on the cheap.
Hey, in his 2 highest minute games, he's averaging, it looks like 22.5 points and 15 rebounds per game. Maybe it's scalable. They also lost both of those games. They also lost both of those games and lost his minutes in both of those games. But please ignore those. Please look at raw numbers only.
It's weird, too, because you mentioned the being the best rebounder for his size. And the only player I can think of who like comes close in recent memory is Lance Stevenson. And obviously their games are nothing alike.
2013-14 Lance was a really good rebounder.
As a tenacious rebounder out of the backcourt, I should use air quotes there. Yeah. Like they feel somewhat comparable.
I didn't even get to address that. You call him a shooting. I know you didn't call him a shooting guard, but like he's listed there because a lot of places just are like, okay, height, great, you're a 2 guard. He's not a 2 guard. that guy.
Backcourt is in air quotations for a reason.
Yeah. Basketball Reference, and they can't do it another way because they have so much data. It'd be impossible for them to manually log, but they are short by height every time. So like if Terry Taylor ever signs for another team, some poor rider is going to be like, he played 30% of his minutes at 2. I'm like, no.
Not quite.
He was actually at center for most of those minutes at 6'5". So I agree with you about the scalability, like especially against other really bullying bigs. I worry about how much his like rebounding pop can matter, but his finishing has translated against other starting level bigs before this season. So I think he'll still be good, but I agree with you. There is maybe a cap on his role. But the problem with that kind of stuff is I've never seen a player like him. So I really don't know. It's just kind of like my gut says, okay, you're 6'5". You're not going to go against Joel Embiid or anything like that. But I've never seen a guy play like him before, so I have a lot of trouble putting him in a box.
And that's the other thing where it's like, how is he still so underrated? Because again, I never hear him come up, even if like people are listing out the bajillion promising players from this first year crop. He's so fun. You would think that a guy who has been this effective, who's showing up near the top of advanced stat leaderboards, who was this fun, would get talked about. And he's not.
Let me tell y'all about the good folks over at Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you'll need for your vehicle in the store. You got to go in there and endure the stupid questioning from the guy behind the counter who then just tells you they're going to order it. You got to go back and get it. They're only going to order something that their supplier happens to carry. It's a big pain. If you have a computer with access to RockAuto.com at home or in your pocket, you can save money and time. Why choose to spend more money and go to that situation when you could just go on Rock Auto, a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and save that time and that money. Their prices are always reliably low. For every customer, they have everything you could need for your vehicle. You can explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. He's not. It's a shame. You chose the nice guy side first, so we got to do it. We got to be mean and critical of players that fans like on this basketball team. Who do you think / who do the stats say is overrated on the Indiana?
So you're gonna hate this answer, but like,
why? Oh no, I already know who you're gonna say.
I don't have anyone.
Oh,
that's,
I do.
That's the thing because no. I mean, like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who my answer to this question should be. And I just don't have anything because I'm looking at this from the national perspective. That's the way that I cover the NBA with the podcast I do with Dan Favale, Hardwood Knocks. It's the way I look at things when running the show at NBA Math, when writing and figuring things out there. Like, I don't know that anyone has a perception that is misaligned with the actual production. Largely because so many of the players who are actually getting significant minutes this season, they don't really have much of a national perception yet.
That's fair.
I feel Brogdon is underrated. I think Tyrese Halliburton is more on the underrated than overrated side. Miles Turner might be the best choice here, but I also think that he's a defensive system unto himself when he can stay healthy, and that's properly recognized. And the idea of him being this floor spacing five, we've kind of soured on that idea over time because it just didn't work with him and Domantas Sabonis. So I don't know that I have an answer. I hate myself for saying that, but like I legitimately could not find someone where I thought the perception was off in the wrong direction.
Channel your inner Skip Bayless. Come on, I need you to be yelling about nothing right now.
Oh man.
So
Buddy Hield is going to be my answer then.
That's a fair answer.
But even then, like I don't like that answer, and I'm gonna say that he's overrated because you're making me, and then like talk about why he's actually not. Because did you know that he had this playmaking juice to his game?
No.
He's averaging what, like 5.6 assists per game since arriving in Indiana.
Can I tell you a guess? I don't even think Buddy Hield knew he had this playmaking juice.
Right, but like
he might have. But where did this come from? Like this is unreal. Like he had a whip around pass on a layup against the Cavs on Monday that I was like, Buddy Hield, like this dude never passed the ball on the Kings. Never. It was in a perfect pass. And like I do worry because I forget who said this a long time ago, but it always stuck with me. It's like when fans of their team when they trade away a player, like if fans are like, finally, that's usually a bad sign.
Right.
And I sometimes keep up with that stuff. People who cover the Kings were like, oh, thank God Buddy Hield's on this team more. And I was like, huh. And I get that he doesn't try on defense that much. And he got to Indiana and he was like, thank God I'm out of Sacramento. So something about that, maybe he just didn't like the situation, but he's playing so differently now that it's hard for me to like.
And people know that too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So, okay, I'll channel my Skip Bayless though. I cannot believe people still think that TJ Warren is good at basketball.
Whoa!
The five non-Pacers fans who remember that he exists. Like, you should know that if you can't stay on the court, availability is the best skill. So if he can't even play a single minute this season, why is he even in the NBA?
Yeah, he scored 0 points this year. What are they paying him for, right? I mean, unbelievable. Him and Ricky Rubio are giving the Pacers nothing recently. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
But no, I legitimately don't have an answer to this one. I just don't think anyone stands out.
Can I tell you who I thought you might say?
Absolutely.
To leapfrog a conversation. I'm just sorting by TPA on NBA Math. And the guy who I think is a big negative that I'm like, wow, that surprised me, is O'Shea Brissett. He is negative on both sides of the ball. He's below guys like Kiefer Sykes, Goga Bitadze, and these impact stats. And O'Shea has kind of had a weird year where he has some stretches, like right after the trade deadline, where he scored like over 20 points in 3 straight games and was playing great defense, started all the time, 2 straight games, excuse me. But had a really solid stretch in there and was shooting the ball well, cutting really well, fit with the new players. And now he's had like 3 just god awful dud games in a row. And so I get why he could have some negative impact stats, but like he's a really good team defender. He is a really good off ball mover and a good finisher. So maybe I'm missing something that makes him have more negative impact than I thought. Because a lot of advanced stats actually say, O'Shea Brissett's not really impacting winning that much. But when you watch him play, you're like, wow, he's good. He's very versatile. So he's one that I thought you might say here.
I'm actually on the opposite end there, where I think that it's one of those where the stats just sell him short because he does so much that isn't recognized within the box score, which is ultimately where a lot of the advanced stats are generated from, just as a baseline. I mean, you mentioned the team defense, and his instincts are just out of this world. He's so good at diagnosing plays so quickly. He's got a good nose for rebounding, and I think he's really struggled because there are some inexplicable playing time ebbs and flows. And I can't predict when he's going to play and when he's going to sit. I don't know that he can either, and I think that makes it hard to get into a rhythm. But no, I mean, he's a fun guy to watch because it feels like you learn a lot about team defense just following him around the court because he knows where to go before anyone else knows what's happening.
Yeah, certainly true. He fits better with the new team than the old team, and he's been starting for a reason. So as we go through this and we say, yeah, there's some underrated guys, but very few overrated guys. And I sort of agree with that perception, especially on a younger team now. A Pacers squad that the Pacers are young and not trying to win. You know, it's a weird perception.
Where's Roy Hibbert when you need him?
Yeah. Where's David West? What's he up to? It's strange that it's viewed that way because I sort of agree. It's just like they play good, and then these guys somehow turn into lemons for the last 4 minutes of every game, and now their season is what it is.
Pretty much.
Last topic, and this one can be much shorter. We don't have to get into a million players. Non-statistical based. Close all your tabs. Just close your eyes. Think really hard about the Pacers. What is your big takeaway or perception of this team this year? Because I've learned a lot from just asking other people what they've thought of the Pacers and covering a team that was supposed to be good and is terrible, which, by the way, the first full season I covered the team, they were supposed to be terrible. And they were awesome. With Vic, it's just totally different to hear what other people think about how they're performing. And I want your take on the Pacers' performance this season. Go.
I think the low-hanging fruit is how much I love the potential of the Tyrese Halliburton, Malcolm Brogdon pairing in the backcourt, especially with a healthy Miles Turner anchoring everything on the interior. Not really going to go that way, though. What's impressed me about the Pacers, in spite of the struggles during a topsy-turvy season filled with injuries and a lack of continuity and a midseason blockbuster trade, is how well they've been able to identify small-scale talent on the fringes. Because when I watch the Pacers, that ends up being what I'm focusing on. You know, we already talked about Terry. We already talked about O'Shea Brissett. Dwayne Washington Jr., I believe he has, 10 games scoring at least 15 points at this point. He's just flammable from the left corner. So he's another one that they found. Isaiah Jackson, the number 22 pick last year, but the explosive athleticism, you can easily see him turning into a tremendous pick and roll lob threat. He's the only one of those 4 guys that we just mentioned, Terry, Brissett, Jackson, and Washington, who was drafted. And it was at the back end of the first round. So 2 of those guys are on 2-way contracts. They're barely paying the 4 of them more than $4 million against the cap this season. So for all the struggles, for all the frustrations, for all the injuries, for all the unavailable players, it also feels like Carlisle has done what Carlisle does best, which is elevate some of those lower end talents and turn them into feasible building blocks that give me a lot more optimism for this franchise down the road. Because eventually those higher end players are going to be available. They're going to land one more star, maybe someone who can close in close games. But having those pieces on the periphery, even if they might not be scalable into 25 to 30 minute per game pieces, that's what stood out to me this season, because that's not easy to do. And it's one of the reasons that this is what's considered a terrible season for the Pacers, because other organizations bottom out where they're one of the worst teams in basketball. But through so many different iterations of this organization, they've consistently managed to be at least competent.
Yeah, they've been decent at finding those guys, I think, in the Pritchard era, like Edmund Sumner. They stole him in the late second round, and they signed Brissett at the end of last season. He's another guy who kind of fits that bill. Alize Johnson they drafted. I think he should be on a team, but I get why he's not. They've been pretty good at like identifying those guys before, but Carlisle's done a better job of like actually sticking them on the floor and letting them grow into the players they can be. So they have the perfect ecosystem for fringe guys. And you know what's funny is like sometimes talking to people around the league, it's like if you're a fringe guy, that's appealing. You're like, oh, if I go to Indiana, like maybe I'll end up playing. Maybe they can grow me to the guy I can be. Like sometimes, you know this, you cover the whole league. A lot of people know this. Like that has been a big help for Miami and Toronto in recent
Absolutely.
seasons. Like guys like that are like, oh hell yeah, like the Heat want me, they can turn me into something. James Johnson got $60 million because the Heat turned him into a player like that. It happens in Toronto all the time. So like growing more in that way can be helpful for this team going forward. I think that's a very interesting takeaway for this team. But they have gotten a lot out of guys that not very many people have heard of. And I will be fascinated next year if they mean what they say. If Kevin Pritchard means it when he says we're not rebuilding, we like our team, we're going to be better next year, and they are going to be better next year. Like almost certainly. Even if they roll them back to the exact same team, they'll be better next year. But if they're actually not rebuilding and they want to be good next year, I'll be very curious what guys on the fringes they keep around and how they kind of paste that with Tyrese Halliburton or whatever they decide the core should be next year. Because if they do want to be good, Brogdon might stick around and Miles Turner might stick around, but maybe intuition says, hey, if we bottom out one more really painful year, man, we could have a lot of good picks in cap space when we have to pay Halliburton in 2 years. But that's not very Pacers-y. So we'll see. And I think that identifying talent on the fringes will be crucial going forward. Adam, I do this to every guest, but I have to say what I say to all of them. I kept you 3 minutes and 22 seconds longer than I said I would, except actually 12 minutes because this is our second take because I'm stupid. Where can people follow you and all your work and all of your other impressions of this Indiana Pacers basketball team?
Yeah, you can follow my personal account at Fromal09, the NBA math account at NBA_math. The big one we're pushing now is Sports Math Network. That's at SportsMathNet. We have basketball stuff. We have football stuff. We have hockey stuff. We have baseball stuff, if baseball even exists at this point. It's been my pet project for a long time and just now really getting it off the ground. So check that out if you haven't already.
For people watching on YouTube, they just saw my mouth drop learning that I've said your last name wrong for 5 years now. 5 years.
I've gotten so used to it. We get so many different pronunciations. We get a lot of mail to the formals. It is Fromal.
Well, Dan's last name also is not said like it looks either. So
I said Favale for the longest time.
Hardwood Knox has taken away the impossible to pronounce names.
And yours is East, right?
Yeah, it's East. Yeah, it's
okay. I just had to make sure.
It's foreign. It's not. Yeah, you wouldn't understand. Yeah. I always say East like the direction when I'm like telling someone how to spell my name like a pharmacy or something, and everyone's like, you have to tell people how to spell East, but you just never know. This podcast is on YouTube now for those of you who are interested in the video format, but is on everywhere you can get podcasts. I'm on Twitter at TEastNBA. This podcast is at Locked On Pacers. I'm going to start using the Twitter account a little more to track every day, every game being played that night, what the Pacers want to happen so they can keep the Cavs pick, so the Rockets pick can be as good as possible, and so their pick could potentially be as good as possible. So that'll be a good way to use that account and get you guys involved in the action. We'll be back tomorrow talking more Pacers with anonymous guests who I don't want to reveal yet, also because having trouble booking times. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.